All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are here tonight to master our financial spaces with my very good friend, Janelle O'Brien. Hello, Janelle. Good to see you. And let me just start by sharing why I put this night together. I want to read Janelle a little bit of Janelle's bio, how we met, and then we'll jump into it. We'll try to keep it to an hour. We want to leave some time for Q&A, and if that goes over, you can stay or go. Entirely up to you if you want to miss some of Janelle's insights. But let me just say, I put this call together just because I felt like it. In my experience with my students, myself, most people have issues with money in some way, shape, or form. They feel invalidated around it. They spend emotionally. They don't understand how to invest. They don't know how to manage, how to budget their finances. And some people just kind of hide from money, avoid it, and they get in a rut, they get into debt, and all sorts of bad stuff happens. And then they come to they come to someone like Janelle for help. And I just wanted to offer this evening because Janelle is an incredible financial wizard that I've known for years. And she's always helped me and given me her insights. And then honestly, given her insights to anyone who's come on a retreat with us, because Janelle's been on a number of my retreats. And if you've been on my retreats with Janelle, you probably sat around a table and she's talked about finance with you. So I wanted to offer that to everyone for free. There's no follow-up. There's no sale of any kind. There's no course. I just wanted to do this because I think everybody should be financially as literate as possible. So with that, Janelle is here. Let me just read her bio for a moment. I'll do the brief version. Janelle has an MBA from the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan, which I believe is one of the best business schools in the country, and holds I think, is it CIMA designation, which is one of the hardest tests in all of finance. She has a vast amount of experience in financial markets. She's traded over $200 million portfolio. And I won't go read your whole thing, but she runs her own investment firm now, which is called Hyacinth. I hope I said that correctly. Wealth Services. And she manages funds for over 130 families. And Janelle is a meditator, and that's why this makes it all the better. So we can talk about mindful investing and bringing some mindfulness into our financial space in our lives. And I'm just really excited to have you here, Janelle. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, David. And I can say I've worked with David for a number of years, and it's been life-changing. David's an amazing teacher, an amazing person, and just a lot of fun. And I'm so grateful that I met you.
Me too. And just one more piece with that. Janelle gave me a list of investments. I bought every single one she said. Whole portfolio went up, has been up. And I'm like, all right, this is way easier when you listen to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Funny thing.
I know. Janelle, can you just start by maybe sharing a little bit about how you got into the financial space and maybe how meditation has affected it? And then I know you have a bit of a slideshow for us to walk us through all the different pieces you want to share tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved the capital markets. I always had a passion for it and interest. And I was a violinist in the Kansas City Symphony, and decided to change careers to see if I could. I did get into the University of Michigan, and then I decided that I wanted to be managing money in some way. So I interned at the JP Morgan Private Bank, where the minimum was 25 million, and just found myself more and more passionate about it. And so that's really just was very short version. But what I always felt was I wanted to manage money for clients the way I thought it should be done, not the way I've seen it done on the institutional side, which I think doesn't do anyone any services. Even I think very wealthy people are underserved. And so that's why it's been a joy to have my own firm, because I can kind of do it the way I want to do it and think it should be done.
And then just one thing. So for everyone here who's live, you can pin Janelle, pin me and Janelle, or you could I'm in just gallery because I want to see everyone's faces. You could enjoy it however you like. Janelle, how did you get into meditation? And then how has that affected you as a financial advisor, and maybe even just your personal financial space?
Um, I think I've been interested. I was interested first, did it many, many years ago with John Kabat-Zinn. I read his book, The Full Catastrophe, which I was so impressed by. And he started the MBSR program, which is the mindfulness based, I can't remember
Stress
exactly.
reduction. Yeah.
It's by mindfulness based stress reduction. Um, and then about 6 or 7 years ago, I happened upon a podcast called Energy Matters, and it was you and Cody. And what I heard was so compelling because you talked about energy and how energy moves and how that affects our mood. It affects our thinking. It affects everything around us. It also affects how our mood and our energy affect other people. And that just struck me as true immediately. So I loved the way you and Cody put together meditation with the energy work. And I found that it just has helped me to be much more centered during the day, much more, finding my own space. And that makes all the difference because as I'm going to tell you in this presentation, you don't want to let anyone else determine your path and what you want. That's not, and so this work and meditation has really helped me to find out more about who I am and what I want.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you've also had some pretty amazing shifts with your own relationship to money during that journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
found out it's not as hard as everyone thinks. It really is not.
well, I hope you school us on that today, because so as I've shared with my students many times, my family survived the Holocaust. Well, some of them didn't, and they were very, very poor when they got to America. I think the whole family came over with like $100, lived in government housing, started with absolutely nothing, and so there's that deep survival kind of energy in my family consciousness, like get what you can, save it, hold it, don't ever ever fucking spend it. Because you never know when the next war is going to come and there's going to be famine. And I really had to work that out of my system as I became an adult, that there were other ways of being in relationship to money and dealing with money. And so I tried to surround myself with people who had a different perspective, like you, and realized that that wasn't the only way to go about it. So I'm going to hand you the mic and you can share your screen whenever you want. And yeah, help me and everyone else change our perspective if you can, and school us in whatever way you want to tonight, Janelle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I've asked David to monitor the chat box. So if David, if there's a question and you think it's appropriate to do it right in the moment, then that's totally fine. And I want this to be very informal. So I hope we'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So,
And somebody asked if we're going to get the recording. I will send out the recording. You can share it with anybody you want.
all right. So as I told David, I'm not sure how PowerPoint is
You
going to,
got it.
okay.
Looks
Did
great.
I have, all right. All right. Very
Yeah.
good. So now I'll go into presenter view. Does that look clear to
Yeah.
everybody?
Looks awesome.
Great. Okay. So yeah, I do have the SEMA, which is the Certified Investment Management Analyst, is what that very fancy title stands for, but I'm very happy to have it. Um, so I do love, or actually I wanted to just mention, so this is, David already went through my bio, that my website is at the bottom. It's hyacinthwealth.com. So that's my website.
And Jonah, I'll have Jonah put that in the chat for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do love the capital markets, especially stocks, but financial mastery is about so much more than investments. So the next hour is going to be a broad overview of all the things that I think make the most difference in your wealth over time. So I'd actually like to start with a discussion about probabilities and how they affect our behavior around money. So probabilities, people are not good with them. So the longer we go without an event happening, the lower the probability we assign it. So the probability is the same, but if it doesn't happen for a long time, we start to think it's less likely. For example, earthquakes. When do most people in California, where I'm from, when do they buy earthquake insurance? Immediately after an earthquake, when the insurance costs the most. We have amnesia. We forget these things even happen. Why the heck do they build nuclear power plants where earthquakes occur? 20% of the nuclear power plants in the world are in earthquake zones. Why do we do these things? This is what we are as humans. And those kind of things like financial meltdowns, earthquakes, they're what we call black swan events. The black swan means that the event is rare and no one could have seen it coming. But it's not true. All these events were predicted, but people did nothing about it. For example, Hurricane Katrina was predicted. Most people did nothing to prepare for it. In your own life, you will upgrade your probability of getting pulled over by a police car right after you get pulled over by a police car. Probability itself did not change. So, what's the probability that two people on this call share a birthday if 23 people are on the call? Does anyone want to type their answer in the chat box?
Sheesh, I don't know. That's a good question. Say 90%.
It is 50%.
Ah, 50%.
But it was 70
Oh,
people
I
on the
was thinking
call.
there's 50 people on the call. Yeah.
So we have about 50 here. If with 70 people on the call, I'll just tell you, the probability is 99.9% that we will have two people share a birthday. So the probability is pretty high that two people in this particular call share a birthday, but it's almost certain with 70 people. So as you see, is it higher than you thought? Is it lower? It's not the data that screws this up, it's our models. There have been fat tails forever. We just choose to ignore them. By fat tails, it means those are statistically improbable things that happen anyway, and we ignore them. But the future, it will arrive whether we've planned for it or not. For example, COVID. COVID was not the first time that rampant uncertainty made planning feel pointless. And I'll say that again. COVID did make planning feel pointless, but that wasn't the first time we had rampant uncertainty. Consider, for instance, how people felt at precarious moments like the Great Depression, the Cuban Missile Crisis, 2008 financial crisis, world wars. We have always had these disruptive events. And I love to show The Economist because it is my favorite gloom and doom covers. They're the best at gloom and doom, scaring you, getting you to buy their magazine. The interesting thing about these covers is that they always have them at market bottoms, and that's when they're encouraging you to sell, is when the market is at its bottom. So you could use The Economist as a contra indicator of what's going to happen in the stock market. Yeah, I mean, we could go through these, and I collect these. I have so many more different ones. But this is just to show that everything in the financial press is geared to make us very negative, not look at the optimistic things that are going well in the world. And I spend thousands of dollars on data and experts that actually know what they're doing. And I can tell you that the great majority of things you read for free are garbage. So be very careful about what you see in the media because it's almost guaranteed to lead you the wrong way. So it's not like present day problems should not demand the lion's share of our attention. They should. But solely focusing on in the moment problems may mean that some issues could appear again and intensify in pernicious ways in the years, decades, and centuries to come. And this is where meditation and mindfulness are so important. We want to step back from all that. We want to take a neutral view of it so that we can really see what's happening and rather than be mired in someone else's belief system, agenda, or worldview. So how does this work in our financial lives? We fail to see the ways in which our present selves add up to and become our future selves. That makes it very difficult to exhibit patience. For example, I'll just use donuts. It is so difficult for our current self to refrain from indulging in the donut for the sake of our future self that is going to be sorry in an hour. It is no different with our finances. This is called a Dalbar chart because that is the investment firm that has become the specialist in this. And What they're specializing in is talking about the average investor. How does the average investor do? Well, this is almost everything you could have invested in over the last 20 years, or from 1993 to 2013. We start with energy, healthcare, tech. I mean, it goes on and on, all kinds of different things you've heard of, you haven't heard from. And if you just, these are all the returns you could have gotten annualized, all the way almost to the end in the red. There's the average investor. How did they do? Barely better than 2%. It's not great. And if we take a different time frame from 1991 to 2021, how did the investor do? Well, they beat inflation, but they did worse than bonds and much, much worse than stocks. Why are we so bad with money when we're on our own like this? It's called hyperbolic discounting. It's the old psychology experiments. So I'll ask a question. Would you like to have $10 now, or will you wait an hour and have $11? Most people say $10 now. They want the money now. But when the question was reframed by researchers and they said, would you like to have $10 now or $11 in a week and 1 hour? Most people said $11. It's crazy the way we are. The psychology. They didn't want to wait for $1 for an hour, but they would wait a week and an hour for $1. This is how we are. Anything that happens right now is what's most immediate, and it occupies all our attention, and it's not discounted. But anything in the future is discounted. We have a lot of trouble. We feel, researchers have asked people about their emotions, they feel them very intensely in the moment. But if they're asked about, well, how will you, from 1 to 10, how will you feel about that in a month, in a year? It's always much less. People don't think they'll feel things as intensely in the future. This is just how we are wired. And any current outflow, anything that's where we lose money, it's very, very painful to us. Losing is much more painful than winning feels good. This is documented pretty well in the research. It does hamper us as investors. So, knowing that we tend to discount the future. One sec. I actually had one more thing to say here. Additionally, most people overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year. So I also coach people. I try to help them reach their goals, different goals, financial, other. And most people do set big goals for 1 year, which they generally don't make, but they underestimate what they can accomplish in 3 years. So in other words, persistence and consistency are key. And we don't tend to persist because we have this expectation. Remember, the present is always much more real for us. So we think if we don't do it in a year, that we won't do it at all and give up. And it's the same way in finance. It's the same way. So this is where awareness comes in again, because if you're aware that as humans, this is what we do, when those thoughts come up that this isn't making any difference to me, it doesn't make any sense, you can kind of talk to yourself and realize that, no, I'm underestimating what I can do in 3 years. So knowing that we tend to discount the future, overestimate what we can do in a short time, but underestimate what we can do in a longer time. And we also skew the probabilities based on what happened most recently. Let's talk about money. This was the intro. I promise this presentation is not 4 hours long. It's 3 hours long. Okay. So I want to talk first about financial wellness, or financial mastery defined. In my view, is one thing: increasing your net worth. And that is it. Increasing your net worth. That should be something that is present in your mind, written down, that you want your net worth to grow. And now I want to talk about how. When I'm with my clients, and I have some of my wonderful clients on the call, we always look at their net worth. We measure their net worth from year to year, and generally it's increasing, which tells me they're doing all the right things. If it's not, then we can look at those problematic areas. At least we're measuring it. We're measuring their net worth, and so we have something to work with and talk about, rather than some fuzzy thing that it's just our feelings. So what is net worth? Well, it all comes down to your cash flow. It's your cash flowing into your life, which is your income, minus the cash flowing out of your life, which is your expenses. We have profit if it's positive, and we have a loss if it's negative. Just like any business, you are your business. There are only two ways you can increase your net worth. You can increase the cash coming into your life, or you can decrease the total cash flowing out of your life. Sounds obvious, right? But you have these two levers and only these two levers to pull. The bigger you can make the excess between the cash flowing in and the cash flowing out, the more surplus you have left over and available to you. In other words, your job is to make sure more dollars come in than go out and continually widen that spread over time so that you and your family enjoy a larger surplus with each passing year. That surplus is your capital. That's what you have to work with. So you can store it, which means you can park it in savings or bonds for short-term use. You can invest it, which means put it to work in productive assets that you hope generate even more cash, which pulls that first lever. Use it to pay off debt, which lowers the cash flowing out of your life, the second lever. You can increase your standard of living. You can buy new furniture, cars, vacations, clothes, or you can support your favorite charities, which is what we see people do later in their life more often. So it starts with having a clear vision. What do I want? And having a clear goal allows you to set the time frame for the investment. I'm going to talk more about what I mean by that. It is important to write down your goals. There's the famous Harvard study about people who in college wrote down their goals. They tracked them over decades, and they found that the people who wrote down their goals were much more likely to have achieved them by the time they retired. I use mind maps. I'm a big proponent of mind maps, and I'll tell you why. David was asking me how I got started with things. I'm very big on process for my business and my life. I'm always trying to refine things, get them down to their simplest element. I want to be doing the fewest things that are the most effective for me. So I read David Allen's Getting Things Done. I loved the book, and I went to one of his seminars. He was still giving them at that time. And I was blown away. He brought out this, it was a slide, but he had it with him. It was an old dog-eared picture. It was a mind map that he'd drawn. And he had drawn this in colored pencils. It was a pretty big piece of paper and was large. And it had every single thing he hoped to achieve in his life. He had, personal, professional, financial, and he even had written down that he wanted to have a corporation and do what he did, help people become more efficient. He wanted to have this corporation. He wrote down how much he wanted that corporation to make. Everything you could possibly think of, he had put on this map. And he said that he put it in a drawer, and about 20 years later, he was going through his stuff, and I guess he wasn't efficient with cleaning because it was a good story. But he said he pulled the mind map out, he looked at it, and he had achieved every single thing on there. And these were not small goals by any means. I've found that so many times. I usually do the mind map on New Year's Eve. My husband's a violinist, and he's usually doing a concert on New Year's Eve, so I'm all by myself. And so I'll just sit there and I'll just do a mind map. I use Simple Mind for the iPad or for the Mac. It's really, really cheap. It's a great mind mapping. I've used it for years. And then I have gone back and looked, and I often don't hit that goal within a year, but I have always hit my goal within 3 years. Of the ones that have a reasonable time frame, I've always hit it within 3 years. And I don't think about the mind map once I stop. Well, once I do it on New Year's Eve, I don't look at it again until the next New Year's Eve I do a new one. So I don't look at them, but it's really incredible how your mind records this and acts on it. And then action steps, the first step has to be small. If you try to make it a big action step or some grand thing, you just won't do it. It's that really tiny thing that you have to do. And once you have this kind of clarity, it's just math. I mean, it really is just math. So I want to just kind of go through cash flows. There are short term, that's your daily expenses, could be gifts, food, dining out, those are your daily expenses, gas, emergency fund. Everyone has to have one. It's critical. You do not want it to be laying in bed at night wondering if your tire blows out, where are you going to get the money for this? You don't. And travel I consider short term because most people set a goal and they travel within the year. Medium term, which would be up to 5 years, that's down payment for a home, cars, paying off debt. could be a medium term. And then long term would be college education for children, retirement, and charitable giving. These all matter because it tells you how you have to be invested. So for short term, you want that money easily accessible where you can get to it soon, like a CD, a money market. Medium term, there are other investments that you can do, longer term CDs, longer term bonds, depending on, the time frame. And then longer term, you're talking about real estate, the stock market, things that you need to be invested in for 5 years or longer. So it gives you different time frames, tell you where your money is going to be parked. So you need to know whether it's short term, medium term, or long term. I ask people that all the time. They say, I want to make money. And I say, well, what's the purpose of the money? Because that tells me where it has to be allocated. If you don't tell me the purpose of the money, then I may be inappropriate with what I do with your money. And that's so important. The allocations are so important. Everyone is always thinking about what's the great next investment for me or that lottery ticket. But when you start to think about allocations in an intelligent way, it makes everything a lot less stressful and you're not having to worry about it because you didn't just go out and buy Tesla for money that you're going to need in 2 months. That's not, people do this. So it's important. So how do you figure this out if you're not used to it? Well, you just basically first decide what's day-to-day expenses, your emergency fund, etc. Anything that's listed here. And then what I do or have done in the past is I take an Excel spreadsheet. I write each of these categories at the top. I put it in a column. It's going to be a column header. And then I know I have a certain amount coming in that month and I fill in the buckets. So I know what my day-to-day expenses are going to be. I know that's just non-negotiable. That's what I have to spend every day or every month. So I put it in. I've got to have an emergency fund, etc. So you fill in all the buckets. And the reason I'm saying this is because you have to commit. None of this makes any sense or any difference if you don't commit. So if you tell me you have a retirement goal and in that bucket is $0 allocated, you didn't commit. It's not real. It's just a wish. So I don't care if it's $25 a month for that longer term goal. Something has got, so something goes in every bucket. Once something goes in every bucket, then you can decide whatever's left is what your highest priority is. And that has to be the emergency fund. So that would get the lion's share of what's left. And then you just allocate. And once you have an emergency fund, then that is there for all the other buckets. And then those buckets start to fill up much sooner. This is very important because this is planning and this is not so that when you do need that car, it's not going to be a big surprise and you have to finance it or you have to finance all of it. So another spreadsheet that I've personally used for many, many years is personal monthly budget. It is available, I think on Microsoft Office. It's free. And I like entering my expenses manually. I do it on the weekends. It takes more time, but I don't like using apps because I don't have the awareness of what I'm spending. So this helps me a lot to have this. And what was also nice is it's also my personal history because I can look like 6 years back. I can look at a worksheet and it's like June, 6 years back, and I'll know what I was spending and how much I was making. And I can actually see my own progress again in financial terms. It's really nice, really helpful, but mostly it just increases my awareness of what I'm doing. I don't really need to use all of these that they have, but I've customized it over the years and it just helps me. But this is another way to do it. The way I said, just put a bunch of columns at the top, keep it simple. This is just another way to do it. But as I said, this is free. It's downloadable on the internet, and I like it better than I like apps. Debt repayment. I just want to say one thing about debt repayment, which is that a couple of things actually. If it's your mother's birthday and the only way mom's going to get a present is if you put it on a credit card, then mom doesn't get the present. That's just the way it is. I do not put things on credit cards if you cannot pay that off at the end of the month. It is horrible. It is 18%. It is a nightmare. I have had people tell me that they want to use the credit card to get the points, and then I tell them how much interest they paid over the last year, and they could have just gone on the trip for what they were paying in interest. It's crazy. It's crazy what we do. So that is a big frowny face. With student loans, I have physicians, they have massive loans. I'm talking about $200,000, $300,000 in student loans. You really have to look at the interest rate and the term of the loan to decide how quickly you're going to pay it off. That'll make a difference. But I also wanted to say that I have clients that are more advanced in their financial lives, and they have the money to pay off the mortgage. And a lot of times the math is better not to pay it off because their interest rate is so low. But if you're the kind of person that's going to lay in bed and just be like, I can't stand this debt, I can't stand having this mortgage, then you just pay it off, even with no matter what the math says, because that's priceless. That's priceless to your peace of mind. And we always want to come back to our peace of mind. That's where we're going here, is financial peace. And all of this should be reinforcing to that. So now we can actually get a little bit to the investments, because there's something I wanted to explain that very few people understand. Because people talk to me all the time about stocks and bonds, and they don't really know what they are. So stocks are basically a company is divided into a number of shares. A single share of stock means fractional ownership of the corporation, and entitles you, the shareholder, to a fraction of the company's earnings. If over time the company's earnings continue to grow, you will get the price appreciation of that share of stock, and you may get dividends as well. It's very powerful. We're going to talk about that in a little while. Real estate, people are more familiar with. It is a long-term time frame like stocks, at least one business cycle, and real estate is volatile. People do forget that, but it is very volatile, and as stocks are also very volatile. Therefore, both of these are asset classes. Both of these asset classes should be held for 3 to 5 years, at least one business cycle. In case you happen to buy it during a down year, you need to give that investment time to recover in the completion of the business cycle, which right now we have gone through a very dramatic business cycle. 2022 was brutal. 2023 was the recovery, and now the recovery is continuing. But I particularly wanted to talk to you about CDs and bonds. This is so important, and I'm overloading all of you with information. I understand that, but we can go over things, and there will be a recording. So a bond is a loan. You are loaning someone money. Who are you loaning the money to? Well, you can loan it to a city, a county, a state, the bank. When you buy a CD, you are actually loaning money to the bank, and they're using your money. And for that privilege, they're giving you interest. But let's say that I am the city of Los Angeles, and I want to build a water treatment plant. How am I going to finance it? I could go to the bank, but the bank's going to charge me 5% interest. I don't want to pay 5% interest at the bank. So I'm going to go out to you, the general public, and I'm going to say, I will give you 3% interest if you will lend me your money. That's a good deal for me because my interest rate is so much lower than the bank. And it's a good deal for you because you're going to get that interest from loaning the money to the city of Los Angeles. And let's say it's a 20-year bond. So, and you give them $10,000. At the end of the 20 years, you get your $10,000 back, but all through those years, you get 3% a year for having lent that money out. And so it's a good deal for people that it is safe. And there's no price appreciation. Your $10,000 will always be $10,000, but you will get income from it. Now, I want to tie this into a much bigger thing, which is the treasury bonds. The United States 2-year treasury bond is considered the most safe thing in the world to invest in the world. It is in fact called the risk-free rate. Whatever the treasury bond, the 2-year is paying, is considered to be risk-free, because the United States, the taxpayers of the United States will back that. And this is why it's so important that our debt is not downgraded and that we do not default. Who believes this? Everybody believes this. Who is the top foreign owner of US national debt? Japan. This always surprises people. The United States, we own the most of our own debt, but Japan is the next. And China. China used to be the biggest holder of our debt. They are less now. And then United Kingdom, Luxembourg, and the Cayman Islands have small pieces. This is very important for the situation of not becoming too gloomy. There is lots of discussion about China and stealing our technology and all these trade agreements and all this complexity, and that's all true. It's all there. But it is not in China's interest to do anything that is going to cause the United States to default on its debt, because they are 10% holders of they have trillions of our debt. We pay interest to China all the time, daily. They are making so much money off of our interest because we have these wonderful, backed by the US government bonds. So keep that in mind when things appear to be very scary and escalate, is China, are they that stupid where they would cause this kind of a situation? I don't think so. So that this should give some sense of stability, which the first time I ever saw on a Bloomberg terminal how much of Chinese debt that there is, or how much of our debt that they own, it was pretty shocking. And I was watching it on a Bloomberg terminal. You can see the buys and the sells. Pretty amazing. So this is how these small things, like us buying a CD at the bank, this is where you can start to make these connections between small and large, and how it affects us every day, and how it affects our own investments. And so what I do every morning, I look at all these relationships and what do I see? Sorry, that was a mouthful. I just want to talk about types of accounts. Very simple. This is very basic. Saving for your house, CDs, money market, kids' college, 529 plans, UTMAs, and savings accounts. Those are the three main ways that people save for their children's college. Types of accounts in retirement. I'm not going to hammer on this. Most people know what those are. We have Roth and personal IRAs. The maximum this year, if you're under 50, is $7,000. If you're over 50, it's $8,000. And then we have 401k plans, which most people have through their work. I want to talk about the time value of money. Well, how much do I have to save? And how long do I have to save it? The math is so powerful. If you simply make a Roth or a regular IRA contribution, $7,000 a year, and you get a 7% rate of return, and you do it for 35 years. So if you start at your 30 and you're going to retire when you're 65, that's 35 years. Future value is almost $1 million just from having done that. Just being consistent and persistent. It's so simple. What if you increase the rate of return to 9%? That's $1.5 million. Why? Because of time and compounding. It is so powerful. I cannot say this enough. Remember how I said, fill that bucket, commit. This is it. This is committing. So few people do it. It's amazing. But I can tell you, I have clients on this call that have done it and are having amazing lives. So just to hammer it again, the type of account you'll use is going to be determined by your time frame and what it's for, and that determines the time frame. Okay, I just want to, before I saw the other thing, people ask about investments all the time. What no one talks about is their taxes. Taxes are just as important. It's massive. So want to do the math. If you have a 401k pre-tax, or you can do Roth. So pre-tax means you get a tax deduction on your contribution. But a Roth means you pay your tax now, and then you contribute, and there's no tax savings for you. Well, now you're retired, and you have $3 million. Congratulations. You're 73, you're retired, you have $3 million. The government is going to tell you how much to take out because they want their taxes. They've waited all these years. And that, if you think about your 401k, why is the government doing this for you? Why do they let you do this? Because they're so nice? No, they're not nice. They're doing this because it's an annuity stream for them. The government actually has projections of your 401k, what it's going to be worth, how much you're going to be sending in taxes every year. That helps them to project what their revenues are or what their intake is every year just from 401ks and IRA. They love it, and it's because of this, not because they're so nice. So now you have a $3 million traditional IRA. The government's telling you how much to take out. So let's say you're going to take out $100,000 a year, not uncommon, and you're going to give yourself a little pay raise every year. You're going to increase your withdrawals 7%, and your tax rate is 28%. In the next 20 years, your total tax could be $1 million. It's massive. People don't realize this. I have clients, very sophisticated clients that don't realize this until I start harping on it, which any of my clients on this call can tell you that I do. And your tax could be massive. So let's say you did a Roth though. You paid the tax now, it was painful, but you did it. Now you're 73, you have $3 million, no required withdrawal, and no tax when the money is withdrawn. The IRS doesn't care when you withdraw it. They don't ever, because they're not going to get any taxes. So they don't care what you do. You gave them the taxes many years ago when it was a smaller amount. So I can't say this enough. Taxes are very important. If you don't have a great CPA, get one, because they can be invaluable to you in helping you understand this math and other things that are really important. But people fail to consider the impact of taxes when they're investing. I don't insurance. I have my license, but I don't really sell it anymore. I know enough to be dangerous, but I know enough to just mention it. So there's life insurance is what most people have. There's term versus permanent. Permanent is 3 times more expensive, and there has to be a reason to have it. Has to be a special situation. And there are those situations, but you just have to understand that it's gonna be much more expensive than term. How do you determine how much insurance you need? Well, most of the time it's when people have kids and they want to make sure that their child is okay, or they have a spouse, maybe doesn't have a job, is really important. So basically you want to have enough, it's what people usually do is pay off the mortgage, pay off the kids' college, replace 3 to 4 years of salary. That would take, your spouse would take 3 to 4 years to grieve, get up and running again. That gives that person some breathing room. And then, of course, how much it's going to cost to bury you. That's about the basic of what you would want to have for a cheap term insurance policy. But this is how you do. It's pretty easy to do the math on this. And term insurance is usually very cheap because most of the time the insurance companies don't have to pay it out. So that's why it's cheaper than permanent. Permanent will pay out for sure. So they're going to charge you for that. Whereas term is, they probably won't pay it out. And so this is much cheaper. So people usually drop their term insurance after the kids are out of college completely and or their mortgage is paid off. That is my short thing on insurance. I can go deeper than that if needed. There's also disability, which is a tax-free income as a salary replacement if you're not able to work for a while. And a personal policy can go with you, even if you change your employers. All right, that's enough on disability. So now we get to my favorite thing, investments. The power of compounding and Mickey D's. Why do I love to use Mickey D's? Not because I love their burgers, although I used to love their fries. It's because they have an investments page and they do the math for me, so I don't have to do the graph. I love them for this. So this is the power of compounding. Please read this. Time and compounding can do most of the work if you're smart about it. You see, I'm shouting. I'm so excited. So you can go on McDonald's website. This is there for anyone to play with. This one is investment $10,000 20 years ago. That's the biggest time frame they'll let you do. 20 years ago, how would you be doing today? So you invested $10,000. Well, you have $100,000 now. That is not bad. That is not bad. And you can see McDonald's is kind of a pretty straight up investment. It was down in COVID, but the reason it's so consistent is because it's called a defensive stock. It means that the economy's bad, you can still afford to go eat at McDonald's. They'll continue to have revenue. The revenue is not going to drop the way a high-end place would drop in a bad economy. So they call it a defensive stock. And they're really well managed. I mean, they do a great job of managing the financials of the company. They've always had a great CEO, and they've tended for the most part to stay out of trouble. And so it's been a really consistent stock. And I tell my clients, it's okay to get rich slowly. You don't have to try to get rich quickly. Like that never really works out. It is fine to invest in a McDonald's or other things like it. I am not making an investment recommendation, but I love their graph. But you can see this little box here. It says reinvest dividends. So McDonald's has a very nice dividend, and we chose to take it in cash. They sent us a little check every quarter. We took the check. But what if you had reinvested the dividends and let McDonald's buy more stock for you? Instead of having $100,000, your $10,000 would have turned into $160,000. That is extra $60,000 for you because you reinvested the dividends. And why does this work so well? Besides that they're giving you money, even when the market is down, they're giving you those dividends. They have continued to grow them for decades. And even when the market's down, they continue to pay out those dividends. It is so powerful. That is why I say time and compounding can do most of the work if you are smart about it. I felt like it was important to just talk about The Millionaire Next Door. It's a great book. It's a study of how the average person has gotten rich, the millionaire next door that you don't know they're a millionaire. They're not, the Kardashians. A vast majority of them were doctors, attorneys, small business owners. They often worked, this is part of the study, they often worked more hours than a typical person. They lived in far from lavish homes. Think of Warren Buffett living in the original home that he had in Omaha, Nebraska, which I have seen. It is not great. And as a result of their decisions and conservatism, and this is my emphasis, as well as the power of compounding over many decades, the typical millionaire was 57 years old when they achieved that, meaning they'd been working for 30 to 40 years. And their wealth, in other words, was a byproduct of their behavior, a justly deserved natural consequence that was more mathematically explained by lifestyle than luck or privilege. Though that plays a role in everyone's life. Simply by being born in the United States, which is only 5% of the global population, it already puts you in the top few percentage points of global income, even if you're poor by American standards. This is so powerful. This shows people can do this. They do this. It's just a byproduct of their behavior. So, principles. You cannot base your life on other people's priorities. This brings us around to the beginning of this presentation. You have to find out what your own priorities are for yourself, and you can't be pulled this way and that way about what other people are doing or other people want. Because if you do, you're going to have 5 Gucci purses in your closet and nothing in your emergency fund, and that just isn't a way to live. So it sounds obvious, but in this culture, we need to be mindful of it, that you cannot base your life on other people's agendas. They just want to sell you something. Decide what you want, write it down, put it in the buckets, and commit. Do the math. How much do I need? How much every month? For how long? And you just need a financial calculator for this. Use the magic of compounding to make it happen. Lastly, be cognizant of taxes. They are real and they can cost you millions of dollars over your lifetime. And we are all living longer. Resources for this, time management, getting things done by David Allen. I wanted to mention The One Thing by Gary Keller. I have read this book 4 times because I'm all about process, but he did a podcast with Tim Ferriss. It's about 2 hours long. That podcast is fantastic. He's a great speaker. He talks about how he prioritizes things, how he built his company. It's a fascinating story. And he talks about saying no. He says no all the time. He's not afraid to say no to people. No is huge for him. And I know has become bigger for me as well, because you just cannot say yes to everything and expect to be successful. For investing, Basic Investing, Beating the Street by Peter Lynch's classic. If you start with that, it'll lead you to other things. Investopedia is a fantastic website for, and The Balance. The Balance has a lot of beginner how to invest articles, which are pretty great. And even I go and I'll refer to The Balance occasionally if I have a simple question. Financial calculators, Bankrate has them. They have good mortgage calculator. And then Dinkytown, I know it sounds silly, but dinkytown.net is where I go for financial calculators. I can show clients reports and graphics. They have so many calculators. They're free. And so it's a really great resource. And then I put The One Thing, and then Tim Ferriss Show, episode number 401 on Apple Podcasts, Gary Keller, pretty great. And honestly, there aren't that many books that I think have really changed my life. Atomic Habits is another one. I really love that. I really love that. And I've listened to that author on podcast. He's pretty great. So Atomic Habits, and then Future Self. Your Future Self is a great book. It talks about how we don't consider our future self when we start shoveling the donuts. And it's a little chart. It just shows you your contribution limits for IRAs. This is just something that's out on the web. You can get it on the IRS, IRS.gov has this. It'll tell you how much you can contribute to that IRA, which is so important. And actually, since I didn't really talk about investments that much, I thought I would have a couple slides just to round it out with some investments in case that's what you were expecting. Kind of interesting slide. This is from LPL, my firm, they do the research. If you look at real, so the Federal Reserve, when they're looking at inflation numbers, they are looking at the PCE number. That's their favorite number, which is personal consumption expenditure. That means you and me. How much are we, what are we spending? How much are we spending? You can see that there's services spending, there's goods spending absolutely plummeted in COVID. And the goods spending came back pretty quick because this orange line is the pre-COVID trend. It's always up. It came back really, really fast after COVID, but services, things we buy, vacations, the hairdresser, it's services. It took a while. It has just gotten back to its pre-COVID trend. So it took 4 years to get back there, which is really interesting. But one of the reasons, and people are so surprised sometimes about why is the market so strong? Why is the economy strong? But if you think about it, a lot of Americans refinance their mortgage during this time. They are sitting on a very low interest rate, which puts more money in their pocket. And a lot of people relocated. It still does have an impact on the economy. They moved out of maybe Los Angeles into a cheaper area of the country. There's more money in their pocket to spend, and so they are spending. And so we've seen the consumer, which is 2/3 of our economy, is the American consumer. We're spenders, and people have had money to spend. So that's why we're seeing the strength we are in the market, because companies make money when we spend money. It's just, I mean, it really is as simple as that. And so we are back to trend. And then people ask me about the elections all the time. Is not my favorite question because I'm going to show you it does not matter like you think it does. So this is from 1952 to 2022, and it's actually showing the S&P 500 election year. How does the market do in an election year? And it actually shows every single month how it goes. So if we have a good January, generally we're going to have a good year. That's just in general. And so if we look at all election years, which is this bright blue, average 10, we end the year up 7.3%. In re-election years only, orange tend to be up the most. If there is a Democratic incumbent, we tend to be up about 11.5%, and a Republican incumbent about 4%. So this generally higher. Statistics tell us that it should still be a good year. The lows of the year have often been found during the first quarter of an election year, meaning we just came through the first quarter. It was tremendous, really excellent quarter for the market. So, odds are we go higher, but I'm only quoting odds because there are obviously years that's not true. But I just thought I'd show that seasonality. And I am done. So,
Woo!
thanks.
Thank you, Janelle.
Yes,
That
you're
was
welcome. You are welcome.
that was awesome. That was awesome. You can stop sharing your screen for a moment, and I
Sure.
would love to ask, there's a few questions, and if you have a question, you could write it in the chat box. First of all, that was really impactful, and I'm gonna have to go over all of those notes and re-educate myself, but thank you. One of the questions early on was, what media resources do you use to get unbiased information, whether it's financial or otherwise? Are you reading The Economist even with the dark headlines?
I am not reading The Economist. I listen to my firm's morning call at 5:45 every morning. But you actually can go, LPL has a blog. If you Google LPL blog, it is free. They also have a YouTube channel. And LPL research is fantastic, second to none, and it's free. And I mean, I would just take advantage of that all day long, that in itself.
I put the link in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah.
LPL's blog. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. I also put in that Tim Ferriss interview in the link, and I will try, Jonah, whoever does the recording, if you could put all the links in the email when we send it out to everyone, that would be great too. Shara was saying that there's a program offered by I think it's the Dow Jones or Dow Janes, maybe it's called, to help women learn to gain wealth and investment. Do you know about it?
I do not know about it, but
Yeah.
if it is not cheap, I would be very, very careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to
Yeah.
know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to know. So anybody have a question, you could just raise your hand. I can't see everyone on one screen though, so you might want to raise your digital hand. You could write a question in the chat box. You've got Janelle here. for a few more minutes, and you get to ask her anything you want. Um,
I'll stay for an hour if people need me. I'm good.
uh, and so, well, let me ask you a question while people take time to write some, if there are any. What are the most common mistakes that you found with your clients whose money you've managed? Are there things that most of us do that we're unconscious of that we need to look out for?
Yes. Um, People can be very impulsive with investments. They'll hear something on the news and they want to buy it without knowing anything about it. Um, just because somebody they don't even know who it is, they said it. That's
Mm.
massive. They're also very quick. They might want to sell something because they think it's not working after a few months, not realizing that maybe they have a McDonald's. People tend not to really understand what they want to buy or that why they want to sell it. Again, I would say that the investments is a part of it, but it's almost the least important. It's what I was saying about cash flow and net worth. You've got to get that straight before you can really start to think about the fun part, which is the investments.
So everyone needs to calculate their net worth and the inflow and the outflow of their money, their savings and their spending.
Yep. And get clarity about what you really want, because if what you really want is a Gucci purse, then that's fine, but be clear about it. Don't just buy it
Mhm.
because, don't tell yourself that you're doing something, it doesn't matter. That's an outflow.
And when it comes to investments, do you recommend people have a financial advisor if they can't, like, if they don't have a lot, do they just invest in the S&P 500?
But per FINRA, I'm not allowed to give investment advice specifically in this
Oh,
call.
okay.
But what I will say is that I have done presentations for medical students who actually don't have a lot of money. They will, but they don't. And I've told them that you should get a financial advisor if you can, even if you don't have very much to invest, because A, it helps you stay committed. You have someone to be accountable to. That's so important. And that person can give you, that person can give guidance to their clients about investments and how they should be allocated.
So there's really no minimum to get an advisor.
You just have to, sometimes it might be a little harder if you don't have a lot, but there are people out there that are, that will take people. Yeah, that will take people with not very much. Mhm.
Okay. What is your minimum?
I prefer not to say in this call,
Oh, okay.
but I do have one.
Yeah. And it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would
It is.
assume.
It
Okay.
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Couple questions. What do you didn't mention anything about crypto. Uh, what is your opinion on that and Bitcoin? I know what you're gonna say.
Um, you do know what I'm gonna say. I think that if I have a rock and I say the rock's worth $5, that's me saying it's worth $5. It's like that with crypto. There is a demand for it. And so it has gone up, and then we recently has been you can buy it through an ETF. And so you've seen a big inflow of money into crypto. They don't, it doesn't make money. There's no cash flow here. There's nothing to analyze. There's nothing to understand. I understand how McDonald's makes money. So I can have certain predictions with a relatively high certainty. With crypto, I'm guessing. I don't like to buy things I'm guessing about.
So your allocation advice is zero.
0 to a very small amount.
Okay. Okay. Somebody asked a question, but it was just to me, but what's the percentage of income you recommend to invest in a retirement, like a 403b yearly?
You have to do the math because it depends on your salary. So, um, they just raised the maximum on it, but I think it's for people it's 30,000 is the maximum you can put in. So if you do calculate your salary, if your salary is $100,000, that's a huge percentage, right? But if your salary so the percentage it just depends on your salary.
Mm.
But I would say, again, this is one of those things where you do those buckets, you want to max out your 401k. That is your ultimate goal.
And not everyone here is American, so if you're European or somewhere else, then obviously you can have your own retirement structures in your countries, but similar. The philosophy is the same.
Yep.
Thank you. I have a 401k, but feel unsure about whether it's enough. So I can figure out when I can retire. Is there a book or a tool to help me just with the, I think with the retirement part?
Dinkytown has a retirement calculator, so go on dinkytown.net and find the retirement calculator and play with it. It'll be very instructional.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I'm almost 23. When would you recommend to start saving for having a child?
That is an incredibly insightful question. Um, I assume you don't have a child, but you're thinking about it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I want to start saving for when I want to have a kid. Don't know when this is going to be. Um, and I hope it's far out in the future, but just in terms of kind of like a goal of mine is to maybe stay home or be able to quit my job for like a year. So I understand like if I wanted to quit my job for 5 years, that would be a different sort of goal. But in terms of kind of like minimum child cost, because college is down the line, I just kind of don't know how to like separate it out based on goals and all of that.
Okay, so that such a great question. And one general principle about this, it's a great question and you should do it. It's because you're very clear about what you want. Just be cognizant that you always want to put the oxygen mask on you first, and then your child, like on the plane, you want to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then the child. Make sure you're saving for everything that is going to support you first, like your emergency fund, your retirement, all that stuff comes first. But again, it is one of your buckets, right? So you have to commit to it. So the time to do it would be now. And you can save a small amount because you have a number of years before this is coming. So you just want to do the math. And again, you can go on dinkytown.net and you can say, okay, I want to take a year off work. I make $50,000 a year or whatever it is. I make $100,000 a year and I want to do this in 5 years. How much do I have to save if I'm investing it in getting a 3% return? I'm just putting it in a money market, let's say. Getting a 3% return. I know I need this much in 5 years. That it'll spit out how much you have to save. So I would say financial calculators are going to be this is going to be your friend, is to get used to them, is like how long and how much those calculators tell you that. And just make sure you're doing your bucketing, that something's going into every one of your buckets every month, even if it's just 25 bucks. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay.
Thanks, Sophie. I think Sophie, you hosted me for the TEDx at CU Boulder, right?
Yes, yes,
Cool.
and I'm an avid follower.
Oh, that's right. You look very familiar. Hey, great to see you. That
Good
was
to see
super fun.
you too.
Yeah, thank you. Um, any other questions? Anybody else? You got Janelle here. Um, Let me just ask one because like the kind of very common Warren Buffett style financial advice for the common folk like us is just to put our money in the S&P 500, leave it, and never touch it again. Is
Mhm.
that reasonable advice? Because I have seen I am on your email newsletter list, and I've seen you actually pick that apart a little bit. What do you say to that kind of advice if someone needs some really simple, easy, put it here all the time?
I think what the actual quote was is that if his wife, who I know of a little Astrid, that if he were to pass, that Astrid doesn't know anything about stocks, so he would advise her to put it in the index because she doesn't know more, and so that's
Mhm.
a good place to do it. And so I would say that if you don't know and you don't have anyone to ask and you're not sure, it's better to do something. It's better to save something than nothing. And so putting it in the United States stock market, which is broadly diversified, is not a bad place to start.
Or is the Vanguard total is it VTI or VTO? The
The VOO, and then they have the total extended index, which is the whole world.
yeah.
So yeah, Vanguard has some really cheap, excellent, do it all in one and done.
So you could, yeah, the other thing is you could just buy the entire world's every single thing in that one ETF and not think about it. In terms of like asset allocation, when if someone is just a little bit more complicated, like, okay, I'm going to buy the S&P 500, which is the stock market, a big portion of the stock market in the United States. And then am I also buying bonds? Am I buying life insurance? Like what percentage do you split your stuff up in?
Again, it's the time frames. So you're looking
Okay.
at the shorter time frames for the CDs, for the short-term bonds, and then for longer time frames, you're looking at the market. That's a general answer. And then beyond that, I would have to know the person's situation. But yeah, that's a general answer. It's your time frame.
Hmm. So what I hear you coming back to again and again is get the buckets together, do the calculations, do the math, figure it out, and then go from there and get a financial advisor.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
an actual professional.
How do we get to Janelle's newsletter?
Oh,
Is that your website?
could just send, actually, so my email, which can I, David, can you put my email in it's Janelle@hyacinthwealth.com?
Yeah, I'll pop your email in there. No worries.
If you email me, I'll put you in the newsletter.
Oh, that's okay. You might get a couple emails. We got to get an email sent up on your website. All right. I'm putting it in right now for everybody. Yeah, I like Janelle's newsletters. You write really nice newsletters.
That's my personal email, bad.
Oh, wrong email.
Wrong
Sorry.
email, but let Janelle@hyacinthwealth.com.
Okay. I was just copying and
If you send it
pasting.
by personal, I'll still put you on my newsletter.
All right. I'll have to, I just wanted to find it, copy and paste. Because I don't
I
know.
know what, here, let me do it.
You do it. Thank you. Any last questions before we let Janelle go?
There we go.
Thank you. Oh, you just sent it to me. I'll put it in for everyone.
I think Sophie raised her hand.
Sophie, did you raise your hand again or was that from before?
I raised it again.
Go for it.
Just squeezing out all the juice from Janelle that I can.
No problem.
So when you were talking about making goals in terms of underestimating how much you can get done in 3 years and overestimating what you can get done in 1 year, and then relating that to the mind map. So would you recommend writing down all the goals forever and ever all on like one piece of paper? Would you recommend putting it in different buckets of like, I think I could get this goal accomplished by year 2, year 3, like 10 years down the road, or just kind of put it all out on paper into the universe and kind of let your subconscious know and understand that these are my goals? You said you didn't check back with them. So just kind of wondering what your process is on mind mapping.
I would definitely do just the big stream of consciousness, get it all out there. I did always organize it like personal, professional, like I started that way, but then I would just go stream of consciousness. Sometimes it was like 2, 3 hours. I would just, map and just let whatever comes up come up. And then once you have that, I would actually just let it sit for a day or two, like put that to the side for a day or two, and then go back. And then you can do your time frames. So I have mind maps that say like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and then I actually put it into the time frames and flesh it out a little more. But first you have to get that big vision.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. The one last thing is my favorite part about all of this is always your enthusiasm about compounding interest. And I think there's a Warren Buffett quote that is the only real magic that exists in the world. Something along those lines.
True.
If you make, let's say, $100-something thousand a year and you max out, like in America, your Roth IRA at $7,000 a year, and you do that for 30 years, is that enough for most people, or do you need more?
That amount of money?
Yeah.
Yes, you need more. And the reason you need more, well, so the general rule of thumb for financial planners is that you can withdraw safely about 4% from your account every year, and it's going to be sustainable. Because of the fact that there is inflation, you're going to have to withdraw more and more every year because there's inflation. So if you think about, most people do have Social Security, but that's getting less, it's probably going to be cut for people like David's age. Eh,
Yeah.
but there'll be some, but you know, living large, no. So you have Social Security, some people have pensions. So you add all that stuff up and kind of figure out, okay, how much is that? And then let's say you have $1 million at a 4% withdrawal rate, that's only $40,000, which no one can live on. So these days for a young person, you know, and they're without doing a bunch of math, they just say, how much do you think they're in their 20s or early 30s. Like, how much do you think I have to have saved by the time I retire? I tell them it's $3 million. And it sounds staggering, but I know people that have done it.
You don't have to have made $3 million and saved $3 million. That's the rub. It's or the magic, actually. That's the compounding interest over time. And the
Yes.
difference you were showing between making 7% on your money versus 9% was astronomical. So how does the average person, like a dum-dum like me, make an extra 2% over 30 years? That could add a, you know, $500,000 or something to the retirement.
You do have to be willing to be in the stock market pretty much entirely. And you have to commit, and you have to understand that, you know, the market every few years is going to go down 30%, and you're going to continue to plug money into it. And that is the hard part.
Mm.
But to get that rate of return, you really have to commit to that.
What do and then Rose has a question, I think, and then we'll finish up. What do wealthy people know that the rest of us don't? What have you found over the years? Is
I
there
mean,
something that we're missing?
it sounds, there's a couple things. I mean, it sounds like it should be intuitive. I mean, wealthy people understand cash flows. They understand having more coming in than going out. It's almost intuitive for them. It's like breathing for them. They don't have to, it's just, they just intuitively do it. They spend less than they make always. That isn't always intuitive for people.
Mm.
And a lot of it depends on your parents and what you were taught and your mindset. And again, it comes back to that awareness, but I've seen it over and over. People who are not wealthy tend to spend more than they have, and it just kind of it gets like a boulder rolling down the hill. It starts to self-perpetuate it, something they start to not being able to get out of because they do it and then they do it more. And that is the first thing so it's the millionaire next door again, of just simply that. And like I said, you know, I was trying to make it funny. And I said, well, if you have to spend it on a credit card to give your mom a gift, you know, mom doesn't get the gift. But I've seen wealthy people through the years make hard choices. So it's not always been easy for them. And I have seen them make hard choices about things they wanted, but they didn't buy that bigger house. They didn't buy the Mercedes, they bought the Civic. I mean, that's pretty characteristic of my clients. I would say my clients are wealthy, but they are not driving Mercedes or they are driving Civics, and it's because they know that they want that security. I have some famous clients as well who have a lot of money, and they do not spend like Kardashians. I'm always surprised when I see their houses. It's not like what I thought it was going to be. And what they tell me is we don't know we're in entertainment. We don't know how long the work is going to be. We need the security. I have clients, they're adorable. They are two brothers, and they do not feel good if they don't have $1 million in their savings account. It makes them nervous. Now that perspective, that's a lot. That's like, what are you talking about? But it doesn't matter how much they would make. If it's a little bit or a lot, they would always need to have that savings. They always need to have it. They've always had it, and just got bigger through the years. That's all. But the principles were always the same. They needed an emergency fund, and they needed it to be fairly large because they might not work for 2 years. And so that was just intuitive for them. And they're the kind of presents they give each other. It's not extravagant, but they're very, very happy because they're very secure. And they know that they're never going to want for anything because they have so much cushion, both in their investments and then their just a general savings is much bigger than what most of us would say is an emergency fund. It's just huge. And then the other thing is my clients who have really, when the market's down, the ones that have a lot of money are calling me going, what are we gonna buy? Market's on sale. What are we buying? What are we buying? They're not scared. They don't want to sell. They're like totally confident in everything. They very assured in their investments.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Rose, your hand is up. Go for it.
Okay. Hi. Thanks for the talk, David. Thank you for hosting. Yeah, my question I did put in the chat too. What if you are at retirement at 60 years old, but you have no buckets, you have no retirement, you have no savings? How do you start now?
Small, one step at a time. And do not listen to the voice in your head that says it's too small, I'm too late, I'm too old. You don't do any of that. You take the income that you have and you start with $20 in the bucket.
Okay. And into a SEP or the Roth, or?
You have to check to make sure that you don't make too much, but the Roth is always the first choice.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. It was a great talk. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Very last thing I have to ask, charities, because I feel that's really important in terms of giving to charity, tax write-offs. How do you approach that with your clients? Because we can't just make and keep. We also have to share and give. So how do you approach that?
I do approach it from the self-interested side first, and yes, there is tax deduction for charitable giving. And then when you are actually when you hit that RMD age, the minimum distribution, a lot of people don't know this. You can actually give your minimum distribution to a charity, and it won't be taxed. So that is a fantastic way when you're older to contribute. And then we can also do donor advised funds, but very important because it helps with the taxes, which I had said was huge. But additionally, there is a factor of being more big, something outside of yourself, bigger than yourself, that brings happiness and peace and even more prosperity. Is letting go of that scarcity mindset is so important.
I totally agree with that. Thank you. I'm plugging our charity in the chat. If you have too much money and you're here and you want to give it away, it's a good spot. Or if you got to do some tax stuff, whatever tax reasons. Yeah. Well, Janelle, thank you so much for taking your time. I know you're incredibly busy, and I think everyone here really appreciated it. Love your enthusiasm and your knowledge and all of it. Thank you for all the links. I'll make sure we put them all in the replay as well. And yeah, now you have Janelle's email. I deleted your personal one, don't worry, but you have her work one, so you can message her if you need to get on her newsletter and stuff. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day and evening, and hope it rains wealth on everybody and you share it. Love you all. See some of you tomorrow morning for meditation. All right. Thanks, Janelle.
Thank
See
you,
you soon.
Dan. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
Thank
night.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Good
Bye,
night.
Janelle. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, Janelle.